Welcome to Terror in Tandem, a podcast about finding entertainment in the macabre. Hosted by the knowledgeable and lovable Laura and Richard Mathiasen. Each episode, we discuss the horror genre, from books to film to TV and beyond. Sometimes, even from that silly old beyond. You can find us on our YouTube channel, Terror in Tandem, or online at terrorintandem.com and on Instagram at Terror in Tandem.
Hi, we're back.
Huzzah. Hello.
Thanks for bearing with us while we took a week off.
We did. We took a little break.
We took a week off to plan
all
our
we did
entire set
was work on
of
this.
2024.
That's all we did was think about you.
We
and
did.
About this.
We planned and worked, and now you're going to be hearing the fruits of our workings.
Maybe some of that was done from a beach.
From the beyond.
Yes. It was a haunted beach. La Playa de Fantasma.
But we're glad to be back. We've
Happy.
missed you, fan.
Hello. Hello, fan, in the singular.
Fan and fam.
Yeah.
You're our family now.
That's right. After what we did to our biological families.
Oh, well.
Oh, God, am I recording?
You should really take that out because
It's evidence.
our biological families will be like,
No,
yeah,
don't worry
see?
about it. They don't
Exactly. Exactly. I knew it was their fault.
None of them listen. So anyway, what are we talking about today? I already know it's a rhetorical question, but I'd love to hear you say it.
Well, I'm not gonna say it. I'm gonna sing it.
And I think that's for the best.
So what is more horrible than my singing voice? Musical horror.
A horror episode about musical horror. Yes, and I promise we're not going to sing the whole time, but I don't promise that we're not going to sing some of the time.
Yeah, or most of the time.
Here's the thing
not
about
all of the time.
Musicals.
I don't like them.
Most of them.
And Richard,
I love
my
them.
beloved co-host, loves them.
It probably comes as a shock.
He is a theater nerd.
Yeah, definitely. Anyone who's listened to more than 6 minutes of this podcast is no doubt quite surprised to learn that I love musicals. So you do like some, though.
I do.
There are some
I do
that
like a few.
you quite adore.
When I've seen, live, really moving, Evita, I thought was incredible. I saw that. I saw Les Mis. I saw Wicked.
You saw one that I hope you're going to be discussing later.
Yeah, I was just naming the big ones.
Understood.
You know, horror, musical horror isn't necessarily the biggest genre on Broadway, but there are some really good ones out there, and one of them I'm going to talk about. And a couple are like off Broadway, but still musicals. And
It's
they're
funny,
not all in person. Some of these are films that we're going to talk about as well.
Absolutely.
So I'm going to talk a little bit about some musicals to film to back to musicals, or films to musicals and back to films.
Now, what I particularly enjoy about this mashup of genres is that it is taking two things that really don't, in your mind, logically go together and smashing them together because what the fuck? And when done well, it's really an experience. It's its own thing. I mean, look at the enduring success of Rocky Horror Picture Show being, shown live for coming on 50 years now.
I want to talk a little bit about some of the historical musicals that brought about this becoming a little bit more common, especially in film.
I would love to hear it.
So Young Frankenstein, Mel Brooks classic horror comedy.
Just the best.
It started out as a film and then had become a stage production. And folks like Roger Bart, Sutton Foster, Andrea Martin, Megan Mullally, they all were in the stage production of Young Frankenstein.
That's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Was Megan Mullally the Terry Garr character?
Yes.
That makes sense.
Also, it was mixed reviews, and that's part of what I think you're going to hear is that not all horror films adapt well to on-stage musicals.
Oh, I've seen a few, and
vice versa.
Some of them don't work for sure, but that's the beauty of this genre. Is there, unlike the vampire genre, there aren't a ton to choose from, and even fewer that are good. So when you're talking about a horror musical, when someone's recommending something, the chances are it's very, very good because it's a small pool.
I mean, one could argue that Phantom of the Opera is a horror musical, but it's really not.
Not originally, no, but it did evolve into that.
A lot of the musical adaptations from horror films have a little to do with the creative team, but Young Frankenstein, and why I brought it up first, is it was adapted from the screen to the stage by Mel Brooks and Thomas Meehan, who, collaborate all the time. And Spaceballs, Young Frankenstein. So it's not just a version of the story being retold. It's actually the adaptation of the film on stage. And Mel Brooks has always sort of loved dance numbers and...
Oh, you think?
Yeah. So obviously it made sense for him to adapt this.
Like the ending of Blazing Saddles?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's amazing. The problem with adapting that after the fact, though, is how are you going to top the cast of the movie? Right. That is one of the all-time greatest ensemble of hilarious people that's ever been brought together.
Mel Brooks said famously that he really enjoys adapting his works to Broadway because unlike film, word of mouth is really how theater gets
look at the producers.
Known.
His first film becomes a smash Broadway success and then gets adapted again.
Yeah, exactly.
It's crazy.
You mentioned Rocky Horror Picture Show. It's a little bit of a cheat because the film came after the stage production.
Yeah. I've got an example that is also started life as a play.
And now it's staged all the time. And even when the film plays in theaters, there are also staged versions of some of the dance numbers and things like that. It's a very
I've seen ones where
cult
they have
following for
where they
this.
have drag queens dancing out the live the dance sequences live.
Yes.
And it's a very interactive experience usually, like people cheering, people yelling, people singing along. Going to see the Rocky Horror Picture Show is like, expect that. It's not like going to see a regular movie where you want everyone to shut up.
I'm going to skip over my next because I think that's going to be in your core recommendations. So I'm going to talk about the opera of The Fly. So if you've ever thought of the film The Fly to be destined to be an opera, David Cronenberg directed an operatic version of The Fly.
Every day of my life I've wished for this.
And the playwright David Henry Wang, who did M. Butterfly.
Wow.
Yeah, and the score was done by composer Howard Shore.
Whoa.
Yeah, but critics panned this, and the scope and reach of the production wasn't able to come to fruition. But it's a big swing.
Yeah,
and,
no kidding.
I guess it had the essence. The opera premiered in 2008. The New York Times noted that the film's gore was completely removed in favor of having the chorus explain all the gross stuff that happens to Seth Brundle.
Interesting choice.
And there were some makeup effects used
during... He threw up on his food.
There were some makeup effects used during the opera, but nothing as in your face as the film.
Yeah, see, I feel like there we found the problem. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, we the Tarantino team drilled down and figured out the famously gory movie doesn't work when you take all that out.
Well, you have the practical effects.
I know,
and then you have
so goopy.
Exactly.
Like, that'd be awesome on a stage, except maybe slippery.
Those probably were great, but the other effects that were necessary don't translate. It's a lot of like in shadow.
I was really picturing somebody belting out an aria and then barfing on their food to melt it.
I'm the fly. Meow, 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 meow. Buzz is the word.
Anyway, that's interesting. I'd never heard of that. It blows my mind. I am going to jump right in to a really fun, wonderful classic that I think a lot of people have already seen called Little Shop of Horrors.
Yeah.
And I'm talking the version from 1986 directed by Frank Oz. Now, Little Shop of Horrors began as a Roger Corman film, which very notably, it's quite different because, number one, it's not a musical, but it notably has a cameo from Jack Nicholson playing the masochistic dental patient who in the musical version is played by Bill Murray. So anyway, Frank...
So that film, though, was adaptation of 1982's Alan Menken and Howard Ashman's off-Broadway Little Shop of Horrors.
Exactly. The 86 movie is actually, the screenplay was written by Ashman, who wrote the off-Broadway hit. And it's all the same music. And Ellen Greene reprises the role of Audrey. Now, the studio wanted to go with a bigger name like Barbra Streisand, but she turned it down. And good, because all respect to Barbara, Ellen Greene knocks it out of the park. She's incredible in this movie. And, you know, this movie very much, to Frank Oz's credit, it looks like a musical. It looks like a play. It's shot with that sort of...
It's like a morning cartoon vibe.
Yeah, and it has a sort of Wes Anderson feel in that it feels sort of like a filmed stage production. It's very quirky. It's a masterpiece. So for the two people out there that have tortured themselves by not seeing this bundle of joy, it is about a down on his luck nice guy who works at a floral shop named Seymour, and that is played by the inimitable Rick Moranis at the height of his powers. So this is actually the first time Rick Moranis and Steve Martin appeared in a movie together. They'd go on to star in a couple of really great movies together, including one of my favorites, My Blue Heaven. But anyway, Seymour he works at a floral shop for the very awful Mr. Mushnick, played by Vincent Gardenia, and he's in love with Audrey, who he's just too shy to really do anything about it. So there's a solar eclipse, and after that, he finds this weird Venus flytrap-looking plant that can talk, and that is voiced by none other than Levi Stubbs, the singer of the legendary Four Tops, beautiful American treasure, voiced like a fucking angel. And it is hilarious hearing him voice this plant that grows quite large and eats people. That's the thing, is he names it Audrey, too, after his beloved Audrey, and discovers quite early on that it doesn't eat anything but blood. And then it eats people. And it becomes sort of a dark comedy. Very memorably, Steve Martin plays Audrey's boyfriend, who is an abusive sadist of a dentist. And he has my second favorite song, which is all about like the horrible things he did as a kid, like shooting puppies with a BB gun.
Yeah.
Drowning guppies.
I mean, the point is that it's ridiculous.
It's a very silly.
It's very dark.
It's a very silly film, but it's also got a lot of dark humor. Now, the original movie, actually, the theatrical version has the kind of classic happy ending, but the original ending is basically corporate America gets their hands on Audrey's seedlings, and now there's an Audrey 2 in every house, and it's basically the end of the world. So
great.
I kind of love that. But now the puppetry in this movie, and this is all practical effects, the puppetry in this movie is phenomenal. It is it's done by, obviously Frank Oz of, yes, that is Miss Piggy. He's also an incredibly talented, and Yoda, and an incredibly talented movie director. But the team that did the puppetry for Audrey 2 also did Dark Crystal, The Muppet Show, and Labyrinth.
Yeah, which you can tell.
Yeah, I mean, and it's incredible. It's like top notch, really, really amazing stuff. I love this movie. It's a ton of fun. My favorite song is definitely Suddenly Seymour, because it is such an earworm, and Ellen Greene crushes it. I mean, she's just has such a beautiful voice. But
the mechanics for the stage production anyway. I mean, you can get away with different things, of course, in film that you can on stage, but there's a lot of stagecraft involved in operating Audrey too.
No, this had a whole team of people operating it because, you know, it's like I said, there's no CGI in this movie. It's all puppets. You know, quite famously, Frank Oz later in his career directed a really crummy movie called The Heist with Marlon Brando, and Brando only referred to him as Miss Piggy and eventually wouldn't take any direction. Like, Frank Oz had to talk to somebody who would then tell Brando what to do. And that was also the movie that quite famously only showed Brando in medium shots and above because he refused to put pants on. Yeah. Fun. But anyway, Little Shop of Horrors, the music's great. The cast it's got Bill Murray, Steve Martin in smaller roles. It's just really a ton of fun and honestly kind of family friendly, I think.
Yeah, I think it's supposed to be a good entry point into Broadway.
It's like a little dark.
Younger Broadway
But
attendees.
honestly, you know, take your little gay nephew to it. They'll love it. Trust me.
Okay, my first is I'm going to talk about the film, but I want to first talk about where it came from. Is Sweeney Todd, the Demon Barber of Fleet Street.
Excellent choice.
So originally premiered on stage in 1979. It was adapted from old Penny Dreadfuls. So for those of you that love Penny Dreadful TV shows.
I do.
Penny Dreadfuls were, you know, collections of horror tales.
This was the OG, like, fanfic.
Yeah.
Like, trashy Victorian era fanzines.
They're from the 1840s.
Yep.
So Stephen Sondheim, adapted Sweeney Todd from some old Penny Dreadfuls. And it's a tale of revenge, cannibalism, murder.
It's
all
great.
Told from the gallows humor. And it's about Sweeney Todd, a barber who's wrongfully convicted of a trumped-up charge and sent to Australia, while his wife is driven mad and his daughter is adopted by their enemy. Which,
by the way, being sent to Australia, I think we can all admit is the worst possible punishment to be given anyone.
So in 1979,
just kidding,
the musical with music and lyrics by Stephen Sondheim and the book by Hugh Wheeler was adapted by Christopher Bond. And it opened on Broadway in 1979 and on the West End in 1980. It won Tony and Olivier Awards and then was revived into a film in 2007. And that's where I am talking to you about this film adaptation because I did not see this on stage. I would love to. If I saw it come somewhere, I would love to see this.
I mean, we've seen The Office episode where Andy does it.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and he does a great job.
Sure.
This film, the 2007 film, was directed by Tim Burton and starred Johnny Depp as Sweeney Todd.
Perfect Tim Burton.
It is a
pairing.
good Johnny Depp, Tim Burton mashup. I know they mash up a lot, but this one is really great.
Yeah. Johnny Depp, for our younger viewers, is the guy whose wife pooped in his bed.
Well, he did a lot more than that.
Yeah,
I mean, she did a lot more than that.
Oh, yeah.
Just kidding.
They both did. Just wonderful people.
So Johnny Depp is Sweeney Todd, and he plays the barber and serial killer. And he basically murders his customers.
With one of those gnarly razors that only barbers
open
have.
Up. Yeah, that opens up.
Only barbers and guys from Peaky Blinders carry.
And so thinking about it on stage and having that visual, I think it's behind... or it's in shadow sometimes.
The stage version, as I know it, is pretty has a lot of blood.
Yeah, but this film does as well.
Oh,
and
yeah.
With the help of Mrs. Lovett, played by Helena Bonham Carter, they make the bodies into meat pies.
One of my favorite genuinely crazy people.
Johnny Depp said that he created his own image of Sweeney Todd with heavy purple and brown makeup And he wanted to give the suggestion of fatigue and rage as if he never slept.
He kind of looks like a cadaver.
Yeah, he does. Yeah. And he looks like he is
or just like
bound
Johnny
for revenge.
Yeah.
Like singularly bound. Burton insisted that the film be really bloody. And he felt that the stage version cut back on the bloodshed and robbed it of the power of the character.
It's a bit of a departure for Burton, who normally doesn't make movies this violent.
Tim Burton also did not want to patch in songs with dialogue, like dialogue interrupted by songs. Mm-hmm. He said that he didn't want it to be a traditional music with dialogue then singing. That's why he cut out a lot of the chorus of the original stage play musical and a lot of the extras, singing and dancing down the street. Like, he cut out a lot of that. He also famously cut the opening number of the musical from the film itself. Yeah. Because he said that when you do that, you repress the feelings and emotions of the characters. I mean,
the opening number is usually sort of an overture.
Yeah.
And it's like...
Right. He said, why is
it definitely takes you out.
You're not even invested yet.
No. It's I agree. And it doesn't translate to film in the same way.
But why this is really one of my favorite musicals is because it's really unexpected. It's bloody. It's not funny at all. It's dark and scary and sad. And I think that it's really well cast. I think it's really well staged, for lack of a better term.
Choreographed?
Yes.
Blocked?
Sure. Theater nerds. And I really think that Johnny Depp falls into this category a lot, for me anyway, I don't know if it's typecasting or overacting or overly typecasted, but he gets into this sort of ridiculousness of what you would think of with those treasure movies. What are those treasure movies?
Pirates of the Caribbean?
Yeah.
It's
a little bit of a caricature, but this I don't think is. I think he does a really great job. It's true acting in this film.
Yeah.
And of course, Helena Bonham Carter, I can't
always great.
Even say a negative thing about her. She's always weird. She's always freaky.
Yeah.
I think they are married, Tim Burton and Helena Bonham Carter, or they were at this
believe so
point.
Yeah.
And it's just a really fun, bloody horror musical.
Definitely
I think this
tradition
perfectly encapsulates what a horror musical can be on film.
And it's the closest we have now to the Grand Guignol Theater, which was a really perfect mix of camp and bloodshed.
Yeah, and this is my most serious selection. My others are very campy.
It's hard not to with the genre. It's inherently
Little Shop of Horrors. Yeah. But this one really is a really serious representation of how a staged musical could become an equally terrifying film.
Only slightly less terrifying than Russell Crowe singing in Les Mis. So why don't we take a little break?
Sounds great.
You finally decided to leave the office and make some time for that adventure you've always dreamed about. But what happens if you miss the boat for that guided tour down the Amazon? Or if the only guides through the haunted Aztec ruins are too expensive? Well, there's always a seat for you at Off-Brand Adventure Tours, where every adventure is an adventure of its own. And by that I mean your chances of survival are almost zero. At Off-Brand Adventure Tours, our untrained death magnets will guide you part of the way through dangerous locales before disappearing entirely or getting eaten in front of you. Then, you and your traumatized group of weekend warriors get to spend the rest of your time getting to know the digestive systems of the local fauna. Fun. No location is too taboo, too cursed by ancient gods, or too full of anacondas for off-brand adventure tours. Worried about money? We'll talk rates when you totally get back safe with all of your limbs and loved ones. You can't afford the best? or the rest. So let's just skip the bullshit and get on the boat already. Come find out if there really are snakes out here this big at Off-Brand Adventure Tours, where you absolutely get what you pay for. This is a fake ad for a fake service on a horror-themed podcast. We do not condone nor endorse utilizing the services of a sketchy riverboat guide with a culturally insensitive accent. Welcome back.
Hi.
So my next recommendation is a bit more recent. It's 2017's Anna and the Apocalypse by director John McPhail. Music by Roddy Hart and Tommy Riley. Yeah, this one came out of nowhere. Came out of nowhere from a director I'd never heard of with a cast of Scottish teenagers that I'd never heard of. The
songs are so great.
This movie is amazing. So it is a zombie apocalypse, but also it's like if High School Musical or Glee was ultra violent and sad. So this movie...
Yeah, if Glee was a zombie apocalypse.
Like if the violence that took place on Glee happened on screen instead of behind the stage. This movie, Anna is a young girl who is pretty typical, going through a lot of shit. Her mother died recently. She's in high school, going through all the things that, high school kids go through, feeling like crap and doubting themselves and all that stuff. And she just wants to get out of her town. So it's a bunch of kids, follows their story as this zombie apocalypse happens, and they band together at the school and try to survive. And the thing that makes this movie such a winner, in my opinion, is it's so joyfully a musical, but the subject material is actually quite dark and mature. These kids go through a lot, and not all of them make it. It's a darker movie than you're expecting, but the musical numbers are so well choreographed and they're so poppy,
and the
juxtaposition.
All of the actors are great singers.
They are. They're not dubbed. They're doing their thing.
And the songs are original and really, really good.
They're
silly.
They're very much in an authentic way tap into the insecurities and fears of being a teenager.
And it really is a narrative device.
It has a surprising level of depth and pathos to it. Laura and I, when we watched it together a few years ago, we were surprised at how emotional it was.
Yeah.
But it's also, and it's a miracle that it works as well as it does. It's also a ton of fun.
Because
it's a movie you can watch over and over again.
About their hormonal emotions.
It's a Christmas film for one thing.
Smashing their, student, co-students in the head with baseball bats.
Well, because it also takes place at Christmas, most of the weapons they end up improvising are like candy cane based.
Yeah. And they make that sound.
Yeah, it's great. So my favorite number from this is absolutely Turn My Life Around, which go on YouTube because Icon Films, which is the distributor, has a wonderful section for this movie where they do sing-alongs. So it's got the lyrics, like a karaoke with the bouncing dot. But
right.
Turn My Life Around is incredible because it's the two main characters, Anna and I forgot the guy's name. They're leaving house, going to school, and
his name's Apocalypse.
they're talking about, it's a brand new day. I'm going to start anew. I'm going to start my life around. And all around them, society is collapsing. People are being eaten. It's all going to hell. There's fires. And in typical teenage fashion, they don't notice any of it. They've got their headphones in. They're singing about their inane bullshit, like hormonal problems. Because their problems are small. And they're dancing through the streets, Footloose style, with all of this awful stuff happening right in front of them, and they just completely don't notice it at all until it's like blatantly happening to them, which I thought was such an amazing way to establish that these are kids.
And they're really hormonal. I mean, that's really what it's about more than zombies.
Yeah. There's a lot of unrequited love and awkward, relationships, and There's some very touching moments in there. They have some, some LGBT representation in the movie that's, really not like stereotypical. It's very authentically done. You can tell that the writers actually spoke to some kids when they wrote this movie, because it doesn't feel like an adult trying to sound like a kid. These are lyrics that work because the themes are timeless. We're always anxious and want to be liked and unsure of ourselves.
Yeah, exactly.
But this movie's great. It's colorful. It's violent as hell. It's
great songs, great singers.
And it's got a really just, you can tell everybody is having a great time doing this and really giving it their all. It's got that sort of scrappy, like, go for it feel.
It definitely has the theater kid vibe.
Oh, yeah. It's a low-budget film shot in Scotland. So, they made do. But it's become a modern-day Christmas classic. And I can't... It's a lot of fun.
Yeah. And with Christmas coming up,
and
it's
in the
perfect
apocalypse,
time to watch it.
Yuletide slayings.
Speaking of Christmas classic, I think that we saw this around Christmas time.
Oh?
We saw this locally, and it has since gone on my list as one of my favorite horror musicals. Evil Dead, the musical. Exclamation point.
Such a good time.
Originated in 2003, so it's been around for a long time.
And I have been wanting to see it forever. We finally did a couple years ago.
It was first performed in 2003 in Toronto and then moved to Off-Broadway in 2006, and since has been performed in regional and off-Broadway theaters with a very consistent cult following.
Oh, sure. Yeah. And I can see why.
Prior to the pandemic, and I believe now post-pandemic, they're the pioneers of the splash zone.
Oh, yeah.
So the first couple of rows,
you have to wear a parka.
Wear a rain slicker.
And remind me, beloved co-host, when we went to see it, were we in that zone?
We were in the splash zone.
We were certainly in that zone.
But they didn't use blood. They used water just because of COVID. But
kind
we
of a
still
bummer.
got splashed.
Yeah.
And it was still funny.
Yeah. I just wish it had been blood.
And
or, fake blood.
Right.
Yes.
Of course.
That's fake blood. It goes without saying.
But it adds to the breaking of the fourth wall.
It's hilarious. I mean, they're on stage with super soakers, just like straight up spraying you.
There's certain times in the play, in the musical, where seemingly gallons of blood.
Oh, true to the movies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they're all singing while this is happening. So for those of you that don't know what the Evil Dead,
shame on you,
is, it's of course about
the greatest horror franchise of all time.
Kandarian demons, a book made with skin and written in blood, and a guy with a chainsaw for a hand named Ash. And so it basically combines the plots of the first two Evil Dead films.
Yeah.
And leans very heavily into the camp of it.
Very much.
The
yes.
songs are ridiculous and very self-acknowledging. You know?
Yeah.
It's very aware of itself.
Show. Yeah.
You could sit in the splash zone or not.
I highly recommend you sit in the splash zone.
It's, lots of people have played Ash and various other actors in this. The folks that played the cast in our version that we saw were great.
They were fantastic.
My favorite tune is All the Men in My Life Keep Getting Killed by Kandarian Demons. All of the songs
Ladies,
are really funny.
We all have that problem, right? Cabin in the woods.
It's just great. It really leans heavily into the camp. It's a lot of fun. I think you could probably watch it on YouTube or at least see some of the songs being performed. I would highly recommend this as a fun outing.
If it's coming to your town, go see it. Guaranteed.
Or a town nearby.
Guaranteed it's gonna be worth your while. It's that kind of show that it's just so much fun, I think, for the actors to do that. I really feel like it's hard to get it wrong.
It's really silly. I think high schools perform it and have a lot of fun with it. But this is the type of musical that I like. Something that doesn't take itself too seriously, that really leans into the ridiculousness of it. Like you said, it's very meta, listen, so it's very aware of itself. And even the actors on screen. The
critical and cult success of this play is a big reason why we are getting new Evil Dead films now.
Exactly.
It kept... When there was a period of time when Bruce Campbell was like, stop asking me, there's never going to be another. And now he's making announcements saying, yeah, like every 2 or 3 years, we're going to have another movie or something come out, and it's going to be amazing.
Bruce Campbell and
Sam Raimi
signed
and Rob
off
Tappert
on this musical.
Oh, yeah.
They loved it so much and thought
Nothing
it was great.
Evil Dead gets done without those 3 guys involved.
And one other thing I want to say is the actor, performer that played our version of Ash, he had the eyebrow raise. He had
he did the chin.
He did the chin.
He really did a good Bruce Campbell. Yeah,
he did.
He was very athletic as well.
And they sing and they dance, and it's silly and it's fun, and it's again splash zone.
Definitely go see it wherever it's playing. It's an absolute love
or
letter.
Or if you don't have time and you want to like listen to the music,
the
I'm sure you
great.
can find it.
Yeah.
I listen to some of the songs from time to time myself.
Like normal people do.
Yeah, exactly. Lots of people listen to musicals.
I know. And I love that yours is Evil Dead, the musical.
It is.
I love you so much. Speaking of musicals, I have another one which fits the episode called Musicals. My next recommendation came out in 2008. It's directed by Darren Lynn Bousman. Yes, that Darren Lynn Bousman, who's done a bunch of Saw movies. It is Repo, the Genetic Opera.
Which is everywhere mentioned on every single horror musical list.
It is? Oh,
yeah.
Nice.
Oh, yeah.
It should be, because it's great. Now, listen to this cast, okay? Anthony Stewart Head is the lead. So, yes, Giles from Buffy is the lead of this, and he has a lovely voice. Paul Sorvino, Paris Hilton, and Bill Moseley. Wow. What the fuck? This movie is... Okay, I'm going to get it out there. The plot barely makes sense. And that's kind of besides the point. It's the near future. There's been an epidemic of organ failure, so there's been a lot of organ transplants, and a black market has emerged of people taking out loans to get organs. So when you fall behind on your payments, a repo man comes and repossesses your organs while they're in you and while you're using them. So Giles, I'm just going to call him Giles. He is the main repo guy for Paul Sorvino's head of Gene Co. This movie is like if Tim Burton and Rob Zombie got together to make a musical. It's got that vibe. It's wonderful set design. Really great songs. It's ultra violent. And the vibe of it is like weird goth BDSM off-Broadway. It's a very hard movie to describe. There's also a whole subplot with like a sick daughter and something like that. But like I said, the plot is secondary to the vibe. Darren Lynn Bousman has a great eye for anybody who's seen his Saw films and the very underrated Abattoir. He has a great eye for set design. And it really comes out in the aesthetic of this movie. It's very like steampunk kind of, but also modern goth and industrial.
Yeah.
My favorite is definitely Legal Assassin. That's Giles's big song where, he's I deliver unscathed organs. I'm the repo legal assassin. It's great. So Joan Jett cameos in this one. It's a real rock and roll type movie. Like I said, Bill Moseley's in it, so that's pretty awesome. And you want to watch Giles be a villain ripping people's organs out and singing? I know the answer to that is yes. So go check out Repo, the Genetic Opera.
Well, just a couple of other Giles-related mentions.
I do have one more. Yes.
Oh, you are going to talk about
Can we both talk about
musical episode of Buffy?
Let's both talk about it.
No, you talk about that because I was going to talk about Dr. Horrible.
Please.
Yeah, Dr. Horrible.
Dr. Horrible's sing-along blog.
Yes. starring Neil Patrick Harris and Nathan Fillion and Felicia
Day.
So
oh,
there's
we love
the
you,
Buffy.
Felicia Day.
Simon Helberg, I think, is Buffy too. Anyway, it's ridiculous. So if you don't want to commit to a full, 2-hour musical, you can watch Dr. Horrible, or you can watch the musical version of Buffy.
Dr. Horrible is truly wonderful.
A supervillain with his own video blog, and he wants to join the Evil League of Evil. And he's foiled by
Captain Hammer, played by Nathan Fillion.
And it's great, and it's ridiculous and silly. The tagline is, he has a PhD in horribleness.
It's amazing. It's so good.
It's short, it's campy, it's a musical. And so check that out, and then you want to talk about the Buffy.
Devastating.
Yeah, it is.
It is, yeah. So I'm going to talk about it's my second favorite episode of Buffy the Vampire Slayer, which is...
The first one's when her mom dies.
Good God, no. That's a tough one. No, I was going to say Hush from season 4. That's my favorite. The one where they can't speak.
Oh, yeah.
And the gentleman. No, this is season 6, episode 7, Once More with Feeling, the musical episode. Now, Joss Whedon, let's get this out of the way. Complicated guy. A lot of horrible things have come out about him. And the other side of that coin is he is very talented and has created some of my very favorite things, including the aforementioned Dr. Horrible. Now that that's out of the way, Joss Whedon wrote this. He wrote the episode. He directed it. He wrote all the music. He wrote all the lyrics. This is all Joss Whedon. It's pretty something, actually. And he had wanted to do a musical episode since the beginning of the show. And it took 6 seasons for him to convince the studio to finally let him do it. It's basically a demon arrives in Sunnydale, because that's what happens in every episode. This demon is like wearing a sequin jacket and hat, and it's super cool. He's like a jazz demon, and he makes people sing. But the thing is he makes you sing the unvarnished truth to each other.
Yeah.
So this episode...
So it's its own horror.
It's another mix of like cute, but also very dark.
Yeah. And people's feelings about...
Oh, it straight up ruins relationships.
Spike come out.
Oh, yeah, for sure. But my favorite is I'll Never Tell, the Xander and Anya duo, because it's so classic 1950s style, and or like, like old 1940s even, like just old Hollywood
like
musical. Yeah, but the lyrics are basically them discovering they hate each other and they desperately want to break up. But they're both singing with a smile on their face, and then it immediately goes into Xander out of the song being like, I hate this. What's happening? What's going on? Now, what's so great about this episode is there's no explanation at the beginning. It starts off and it's a musical. And you're like, what? As the audience member, you're like, what is happening? And then the characters start saying like, what the fuck is happening to us?
Right.
So it's
They're
like
taken over by this singing demon.
Basically what I've always thought whenever I watched Oliver as a kid was like, why isn't anybody shaking people and being like, what are you doing?
It's sort of like why I hate musicals is because, come on, people normally just don't break into song.
Did you need to sing that at me?
I know.
You could have just sent that in a text.
People don't normally break into song and sing at you. Yeah, and Joss Whedon saying, well, maybe they're possessed by a demon.
And that's the thing. The demon, if they don't defeat it, you're going to sing until you die. Yeah. And all that stuff. But some of there's also a scene where Giles is basically breaking down what happens to them, but he can't speak because he doesn't want to sing. So he's using a projector and sort of mimicking what's going on. And it's an amazing episode through and through, but also really need to shout out the sequence between Willow and Tara. Now, they have a song together called Under Your Spell. Now, this was pretty groundbreaking at the time. It's tame now, but this was a same-sex relationship, and this song is all about their relationship with each other, and it's beautiful. And Amber Benson as Tara really knocks it out of the park. And for anybody who ends up watching the rest of season 6, but anyway, it's a wonderful episode. It's hilarious, but in typical Joss Whedon fashion, most of that hilarity is to set you up to have your heart ripped out.
And shout out to Allison Hannigan right now, who is killing it on Dancing with the Stars.
Is she?
Yeah, she's
Didn't
in
know
the
that.
top, and I should say Allison Hannigan Denisof, because that's where who she married and met.
Oh, I love Alexis Denisof. Yeah, and between Buffy and How I Met Your Mother, she basically never needs to like lift a finger again in her life.
Well, she's lifting a foot and a finger.
Hey, way to go, Willow. But anyway, it's one of those. It's an early example of, I think a lot of shows have done a musical episode at this point. This was one of the first of like the modern era. Also, Buffy was such an influential show.
It was where it flew where the musical episode of Grey's Anatomy crashed and burned.
Dear God, they did a musical episode of Grey's Anatomy. It was like
they were like pushing on somebody trying to revive them and being like, "Why do you die?" Yeah.
Oh no.
It's so bad.
Whoa. Fucking in a closet.
If you want to see some real horror. My last recommendation.
I'm sorry.
I know.
I need a second.
I'm moving on quickly. My last recommendation is a little bit of a cheat. It's not a cheat. It fits the category, but it's not what you think. So
it's a lot of equivocation.
It's called Studio 666.
Oh, nice.
And it came out in 2022. And it is a Foo Fighters film starring the Foo Fighters.
And sadly, all the Foo Fighters. Yeah.
I know. It was really hard watching Taylor Hawkins in this film, knowing that he just passed away. And
this was like his last real project, I think. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Ooh, sorry to bum everyone out.
I know. Sorry. Jeez. But what's funny is in the film, people keep dying and they're like, let's dedicate this album to them. We'll do it for them. So we're doing this episode for Taylor Hawkins.
Yeah.
Anyway, this film starts out with Jenna Ortega crawling on the ground, being like finished off, like a final girl killed right at the start of the film.
Interesting.
Yeah.
That the star of Scream dies like Drew Barrymore in Scream.
Yeah, somewhat.
Like a big name right at the beginning of the film.
Very violent, much more violent.
I just mean
this film is very violent.
Nice.
Very bloody. So it stars every member of the Foo Fighters. It's very campy. It's really dirty. The sense of humor is dirty. It's really funny. I laughed out loud a lot. And so the plot is that the Foo Fighters are working on their 10th album, and their manager has a perfect place for them to film and create this studio.
Is that Jeff Garlin in the movie? That's awesome.
A little problematic as well.
Who isn't?
I know. So he has a perfect place for them to record this and create this album. They're shown this house by a realtor who is like perfectly cast. I'll get back to you on who. I didn't make a note of it. My co-host will find it for me. But she's incredible and hilarious. So they move into this house for a couple of months, and it's clearly haunted. Before they even move in, they're seeing weird things, and they're just completely ignoring it.
Leslie Grossman?
Yeah, she's so funny in it.
Nice, yeah.
So what they do is find out Leslie Grossman, the realtor, tells them that the prior band tried to record an album but never finished, and the lead singer of the band was Jenna Ortega. But they see all these warning signs that the place is doomed, but their egocentricity wins. It doesn't allow them. They're singularly obsessed with making this album, so it doesn't even faze them. And when their main engineer is electrocuted as he's setting up the equipment, they don't stop. They say, we're going to dedicate the album to him, which is what I said. So Dave Grohl starts to really get obsessed. And he is like sort of stuck. And he's like, how about this song? But it's all their old songs. And they keep the rest of the band's like, yeah, that we created that song 20 years ago. Just when he thinks he has a breakthrough, he's at the piano playing and singing this song. It's Hello by Lionel Richie. And Lionel Richie comes and makes a cameo.
Oh, man.
And yells at him and drops all these F-bombs, to which Dave Grohl actually said Lionel Richie insisted on swearing up the whole scene.
How can you say no to that? So this man stalked a blind woman in that music video. So do what he says.
So Dave Grohl starts to have nightmares, and it's a devil house. It's a demon house. And he finds an old studio and recordings in the basement. And when the recording starts to play backwards, he gets possessed by this demon. And he has to finish this album that was never finished by the prior inhabitants. He comes up with this new note called L sharp. And nobody can figure out how to play it, but he just becomes so obsessed. Whitney Cummings plays like an overly flirty hippie neighbor. She's really great. She says that the house is built on top of the nexus between rock and roll and evil. And I guess there's secret incantations of Aleister Crowley. And you have to complete the song, which is called Tears of God, in order to open a portal to allow the demons to pass through.
So essentially this movie is what my parents considered heavy metal to be in the 80s.
Exactly. Yeah. They're saying this is what heavy metal does.
This is what they said would literally happen, and it never did.
So Dave Grohl gets further into the possession, and he is trying to finish this one song, which is like, they're like, we can't have a 38-minute song. And he's like, yes, we can. And it can be longer. So the band starts to rebel against them, and, things start to happen. Dave Grohl goes full on beast mode, and lots of things happen. But a few notable things I want to say that made me laugh out loud and were just like such a joy. They do a Pearl Jam high five as a band. They say Pearl Jam high five, like on the cover of Alive.
Yes.
And they do it. And then at one point they're like, Jeremy Smokin'.
Oh my God. So it's like all grunge deep cuts?
Yeah.
That's great.
It was filmed in secret during the pandemic.
Yeah. I remember when he came out and he announced it, he was so like excited about it.
Steve Vai is the stunt guitarist in the film for Dave Grohl.
Oh my God, that's hysterical.
John Carpenter stars as the replacement sound engineer. And he also co-wrote the theme music.
Wow.
And it's ridiculous. So when I say it's a little bit of a cheat, they're singing. They're not really singing. They're playing this
but it's like
tune.
It's like Rock and Roll High School with the music with the Ramones.
It's a musical horror movie. Yeah. It's not a horror movie that's a musical.
I understand. But it's carrying on the long tradition of rock bands making weird, campy movies.
This is the kind of horror musical I love because it's got good music, fun music, but it's also really ridiculous. And the violence is very violent, but funny and like fun.
Yeah, no, there's you can be ultra violent and like be hilarious about it.
This isn't going to be Oscar-winning performances. This is a band making a horror movie
This isn't going to get Dave Grohl as EGOT.
Well, it could because it's really fun. Like It's a campy comedy. I don't see why it wouldn't, but I think it was great. And again, Taylor Hawkins.
R.I.P. buddy.
Rest in peace, man. You were pretty incredible, and he ad-libbed every line in this movie. He refused to learn any of the script because he said, I'm just going to be myself since I'm playing myself and how I would react in these situations.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Well, that's awesome.
There's one member of the band who doesn't have anywhere to sleep, so he's constantly being found like eating chips in secret and sleeping on the floor like covered in ketchup. Listen, you just gotta watch it. I can't tell you how much fun this was.
Yeah,
it is a lot of fun. And if you hate the Foo Fighters, they don't really play much of their music.
How could you hate the Foo Fighters?
I don't know, but some people don't like the Foo Fighters.
Bummer.
I guess they're great.
Yeah.
But it's not really a Foo Fighters musical movie. It's a Foo Fighters making an album with Tears of God finishing the song.
Which we know that's how rock gets made.
Yeah, it does.
For sure. Well, that's musicals.
We hope you enjoy
I never thought that I would be hosting a pod with my lovely I loved it. This was a lot of fun to prepare for because I may have mentioned I love musicals.
He really does.
And I love horror, so why wouldn't I like this?
And he hasn't seen
Studio 666? No, not yet. It's on my list, but listen, it's a long list, man. I gotta go to work, you know?
Yeah.
It's life.
We have to keep trying to get, you listeners to listen.
Speaking of which, subscribe, like, and leave a review.
Exactly.
Coming up, though, we do want to mention real quick, it's the end of the year, so we'll be wrapping up.
We'll be wrapping up our goods and bads.
Yeah.
Our best and
which I'm looking forward to. There was a lot of great stuff this year, and
absolutely.
I can't wait to talk about it.
And there were a lot of things that we didn't love.
Or didn't get to. Life. Anyway, bye, everybody.
Bye. Terror in Tandem is written, produced, and recorded by Laura and Richard Mathiasen, and edited and mixed by Richard Mathiasen. Our theme was written and performed by Carrie Denver, and all other music was written and performed by David Hispanic. All opinions expressed on this podcast are our own and should be taken as such. Thanks for listening, and please remember to give us a like, a review, and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. See you next time. We're static.